Hi everyone, and today I have volume 78 of One Piece. Title of this volume is The Charisma of Evil. Before I start, I'd like to talk about what's written right here. And One Piece has broken the world record in number of copies in circulation worldwide, with that number being over 300 million. On the cover of this volume, we have Franky, Zoro, Robin, Luffy, Usopp, and all. And down here we have Harudin, Olobus, Cavendish, Bartholomew, Sai, Idio, and Elisabello. Right at the bottom we have the dwarves, Rampo, Wicca, Chow, Kabu, Mancheri, Leo, Inel, Bomba, and Bian. That's the side, that's the back. You might want to note that this volume is a counterpart to the last volume, volume 77. So if you have a look to the previous volume, it has all the, you could say the bad guys, the Donquixote pirates and their officers and subordinates, etc. And this volume right here has all the, the heroes, the Straw Hats, the Colosseum fighters, the dwarves, and of course Law. Yeah, that's about it. Let's have a look underneath the jacket cover. So when you compare, it's the same, no differences this time. On the side, here's the difference. So Mancheri's been replaced by the face of Panda Man. So could this be Panda Woman? Yeah. And that's the back. So volume 78, titled The Charisma of Evil. It has 10 chapters, starting at chapter 776 all the way to 785. So just a quick reminder on the events towards the end of the last issue. There was total chaos throughout Dressrosa. Several battles were taking place. Franky had just defeated Senor Pink. Zoro was facing off with Pika, but it seems like he disappeared. The Colosseum fighters are on the Palace Plateau's base. King Riku, Usopp, Viola, and a few of the citizens are on the Old King's Plateau. And Luffy was fighting Bellamy against his wishes. Bellamy still trying to prove himself to Doflamingo, though he himself knows that he can't. No matter what he does, he will never be able to be worthy in Doflamingo's eyes. Law is fighting against both Doflamingo and Treble, so he'll probably have the hardest time. Kairos was fighting against Diamante on the flower fields. Rebecca and Robin are also present there. Chapter 776. At the entrance to the Smile Factory, Franky urges the dwarves to tear it down once and for all, and they gladly comply. As they rush in, Franky collapses from his wounds, entrusting Luffy to finish everything as the chaos on the streets of Dressrosa continue. At the flower field, Kairos battles Diamante. After a few exchanges, Diamante uses the move Hero Release to make spiked steel balls rain down on the flower field. Using her ability, Robin shields Rebecca and herself with a canopy of flowers, while Kairos uses his sword to deflect all the balls that come his way. Diamante is shocked at Kairos' prowess, and as a last resort shoots Kairos in the leg, causing him to fall and be struck by the balls. Despite being severely injured, Kairos stands up and continues to battle Diamante. This shocks Diamante, and eventually Kairos does defeat him. So finally, a top executive has been defeated. Chapter 777. Kairos and Diamante's fight ends with Diamante falling on Scarlet's grave. Kairos thanks Robin for protecting his daughter. Rebecca then runs to her father, and it is shown that Robin has also been injured by the spikes in her attempts to protect Rebecca. Viola reports to the others on the Raw Plateau that Diamante has now been defeated and that Kairos, Rebecca and Robin are safe. The people of Dressrosa are excited that the Donquixote family are one by one being taken down after no one thought it to be possible. Viola confirms the family members that have been defeated by Luffy and his friends and reminds them of the ones that remain: Bellamy, Pika, Treble and of course Doflamingo. King Riku decides to go into town as there is nothing more to fear from the townspeople coming for his head. With this, Tank and the other townsmen decide to join him in hopes of letting everyone else know of the newfound hope. At the palace's base, Pika is shown to be using his devil fruit powers to create spikes all over, causing the base to shake. He then appears to Kairos and Rebecca in the flower field, disappointed in Diamante for losing to Kairos. Pika then asks Kairos and Rebecca about King Riku. Kairos states that the country is hoping for the day King Riku takes up his throne again. With this, Pika disappears. As Zoro continues to try and find Pika to fight directly, he notices that Pika is attacking all those who are too injured to fight. Annoyed with these tactics, Zoro continues to slash at everything that Pika presents to him. Pika then reminds Zoro that King Riku was still on the Raw Plateau. With that, Pika disappears from Zoro's location and back to the giant stone statue of himself. Back in the statue, Pika moves towards the plateau with the intent of crushing King Riku. Zoro, now realizing Pika's plan, attempts to get to the stone Pika before he makes it to the plateau. Zoro comes up with 5 options. However, he decides to go with the 5th one, which is to fly up and cut the real Pika apart. Chapter 778. Pika makes his way towards the plateau where King Riku is located. Seeing this, Elisabello prepares to use his King Punch, but Zoro stops him after explaining how Pika will simply reform his body. He asks Elisabello to give him 2 minutes. Zoro then runs to Orobus and asks him to throw him towards Pika. As Pika begins to attack Riku, Orobus hurls Zoro towards the executive. Zoro coats his sword with Busoshoku Haki and begins a technique, claiming that there is nothing in the world that he cannot cut. Pika tells Riku that he is not fit to be king if he cannot defeat his enemies, and that he failed to protect his country because he loves peace too much. Pika then prepares his attack, but before his attack can connect, Zoro cuts his stone body in half. Pika moves to the top half of the enormous stone statue, but Zoro simply cuts that in 2 and continues cutting the statue until Pika is forced to emerge. Pika, coating his entire body in Busoshoku Haki, attempts to attack his opponent while claiming that Zoro could never cut through him, but Zoro responds that all he needs is a stronger Haki. With that, he cuts Pika in midair. As Pika is defeated, Elisabello uses his King Punch to blast away the rest of Pika's stone body, moaning that he was merely doing the cleaning up. Chapter 779. Hanging off a ledge, Zoro recalls his training with Mihawk, in which the master swordsman informed him that having chips on the blade of his sword is an affront to his honor, and that he could prevent this by hardening his blades with Busushoku Haki. He also forbade Zoro from drinking until he mastered this technique. Meanwhile, the Smile Factory explodes to the shock of those who can see it. Inside, the dwarves carry tanks of sads and smash them while proclaiming that they will no longer be taken advantage of. However, Treble, who is watching, claims that they can still restore the factory and heal Pika because they still have Mancheri. Of course, they don't know that they've lost Mancheri at this point. At the sunflower field, Leo and Mancheri meet up with Kairos, Robin and Rebecca. Mancheri offers to heal the heavily wounded Kairos. However, Kairos refuses to let Mancheri do this because he believes that there is some limit to her powers and that there are those in the country who need such healing powers more than he does. As Mancheri looks over Dressrosa for the first time, Kairos notes that they can only leave Donquixote's family defeat to Luffy and Law. Below the palace, Koala contacts Sabo and asks him where he is, prompting Sabo to admit he is running a little late because it took some time to free all the prisoners in the Colosseum, before stating he was on his way. Back at the King's Plateau, Usopp tearfully pulls Zoro up while Kinemon congratulates him for defeating Pika, but Zoro tells them it is not over yet because the bird cage is still present, which means Doflamingo is still alive. When the citizens note that Viola told them Doflamingo's main forces only have 3 members left, Viola corrects them and reveals there are only 2 left now because another battle has just ended. On the first floor of the palace, Luffy stands over the defeated Bellamy and recalls how their fight ended. So we see that Bellamy is using his ability to bounce around, and he does strike Luffy a few times. And then towards the end of the fight, Bellamy goes in for one powerful attack and he leaps towards Luffy. But Luffy steals himself and punches Bellamy into the ground with a Busushoku Haki hardened second gear punch, defeating Bellamy once more. After defeating Bellamy, Luffy screams Doflamingo's name, prompting Doflamingo to note that he hopes Luffy comes up to the roof and sees Law's corpse. Chapter 780. As Doflamingo calls Luffy to the rooftop, it is shown what happened a few minutes earlier. We see Doflamingo and Treble overwhelm Law. Doflamingo, standing over the severely injured Law, tells him that he would grant him one wish if Law performed the perennial youth operation on him. If you don't remember, Law, using his ability, can grant someone eternal life. That technique is called the perennial youth operation. However, if he does grant that person eternal life, he himself would lose his life. Anyway, so like I said, Doflamingo tells Law that he would grant him any wish he wants if he performs this technique. Law mocks Doflamingo by saying that he will use this technique to grant Doflamingo eternal life if he can bring back Corazon and submit himself to every citizen in Dressrosa. Enraged, Doflamingo shoots Law repeatedly, mocking the word Corazon on Law's jacket. He furiously yells that despite all Law's effort to imitate Corazon, the legacy of the heart will end. Back to the present. Luffy breaks through the palace roof, eager to fight Doflamingo. Doflamingo taunts him about Bellamy and blocks a gear third punch with Spider's web. Luffy leaps over the web and uses Hawk Gatling to attack Doflamingo from above. But Doflamingo uses Break White to surround Luffy in a mass of strings. Luffy breaks out of Doflamingo's trap but steps on a pool of blood. Looking around, he sees Law lying on the ground. In confusion, Luffy asks Law what has happened, but he remains unresponsive. Doflamingo tells Luffy that Law is dead, shocking the pirate. As the citizens of Dressrosa realize that the birdcage is shrinking, Doflamingo mocks Law's last words and states that it is time for the game to end. Luffy prepares to fight, but faintly hears Law's voice telling him to listen closely. Chapter 781. The birdcage continues to shrink as its victims try to run. In the palace, Doflamingo taunts Luffy's inability to save everyone and says that the birdcage will kill all of them if one out. As Luffy rushes towards Doflamingo, Law suddenly switches places with him. Shocked, Doflamingo and Trouble are too slow to react, and Law's attack tears apart Doflamingo's internal organs. Law reveals that he had kept a huge room around the palace. He escaped being shot repeatedly by Doflamingo by swapping his body with another one nearby. After a series of struggle between Doflamingo, Law, Treble and Luffy, Law stands over Doflamingo, telling him that he should have died instead of Corazon, and delivers a final attack before he himself collapses from exhaustion. However, Doflamingo stands up to Treble's joy and Luffy and Law's shock. Doflamingo reveals that he is using his devil fruit to perform first aid to repair his organs, although he admits that he is not healed. Doflamingo prepares to stomp Law to death, but as Law cries out in anger, Luffy stops the attack and the two pirates face off. Chapter 782. Luffy prevents Doflamingo from smashing Law's head twice. The second time, Luffy counters Doflamingo's strike by using Howl Shoku Haki, shocking Treble, who had no idea Luffy possessed it as well. Luffy and Doflamingo both use their Howl Shoku Haki to try to overwhelm the other, as Treble remembers a 10-year-old Doflamingo achieving it 30 years ago. He told Doflamingo that the former world noble was destined to be a king, and gave Doflamingo a gun as well as the Ito Ito no Mi, so that Doflamingo could exact revenge on anyone he wanted dead. Treble then boasts to Luffy that he will never be a match for his captain, as Doflamingo's fate as a world noble was what triggered his insanity and rage. After a series of attacks and Luffy using a technique called the Gomu Gomu no Eagle Bazooka to try and finish Doflamingo off, Doflamingo manages to kick Luffy with an attack called Athlete Fred, sending him crashing into the edge of the platform. Treble intercepts Luffy and holds him down using his devil fruit powers so that Doflamingo can finally finish Law off. Luffy gets angry and attempts to punch Treble with no effect. Luffy gets confused, saying that his Bushu Shoku Haki should have been able to bypass Treble's Logia ability. Law tells Luffy that fighting against Treble is futile, and he insults Treble. This enrages Treble, who then attacks Law with a technique, immobilizing him. Treble then prepares to teach Law a lesson and tells that he, Virgo, Diamante and Pika took a young Doflamingo who managed to escape Marijoa alive under their wing 30 years ago and groomed him to be a powerful king who would show them his dreams. The four of them made sure that anything that caused Doflamingo pain got eliminated, saying that no one would stand before Doflamingo, the future pirate king. Treble tells Law that the 5 Donquixote pirates had always considered themselves family and prepares to kill Law by using a lighter to set the mucus binding Law on fire. However, Law retorts, saying that all of Treble's loyal action towards Doflamingo were nothing more than Doflamingo manipulating him like a puppet. In rage, Treble leaps at Law, ready to skewer him. Doflamingo warns his executive against going after Law. Treble, ignoring this, attacks Law. But Law activates a room and uses tack Sturban to lift up his severed arm and vertically spin his sword straight through Treble. This causes Treble to bleed, shocking Luffy. Meanwhile, on the flower field, Leo suddenly stares upwards towards the palace roof, and so do the dwarves outside the now destroyed smile factory, with Flapper saying that his heart suddenly feels lighter. Frankie, who has regained consciousness, breaks the dwarves out of this state by shouting at them to get away from the birdcage. Meanwhile, all of Treble's mucus covering him has slipped off, revealing him to be incredibly skinny. However, Treble spits mucus on his lighter, cursing Law and swearing to take the Shichibukai with him, as a massive explosion occurs. Chapter 783. Luffy and Doflamingo manage to avoid Treble's explosion, with Luffy carrying Law out of harm's way. Luffy then throws Law at Robin, where Kairos, Rebecca, Leo, Manchuri and Kabu are also located. Leo and Manchuri try to reattach Law's severed arm. They then prepare to leave the flower field with the assistance of Cavendish and Bartholomew. However, Law decides to remain behind and Cavendish stays with him. Meanwhile, Luffy continues attacking Doflamingo, but fails to harm the Shichibukai. Doflamingo then attacks Luffy, sending Luffy flying. Doflamingo then catches up to Luffy and remembers the time Luffy defeated Crocodile 2 years ago, as he held Luffy's wanted poster and decided to investigate his crew. Doflamingo then remembers how Luffy participated in the war at Marineford and survived, and was impressed that Luffy survived that and made it all the way here. He then proceeds to kick Luffy into the edge of the palace roof, causing a large amount of the palace wall to fall. Luffy continues attacking Doflamingo, and Doflamingo reminds Luffy about the shrinking birdcage. Doflamingo is confident that within 30 minutes the weakest Dressrosa citizens will die, and more will follow until everyone will go silent. Doflamingo tells Luffy that the Dressrosa citizens will curse him with their last breath, because if Luffy and his friends had never invaded Dressrosa, everything would have remained peaceful. Luffy refutes this, saying that it had all been an illusion. Doflamingo laughs, saying Luffy had a hero complex and that the pirate would never be more than a thorn in his side. However, Luffy states that Doflamingo had hurt his friends and that he would not let the Shichibukai kill any one of them, and activates Gear 4th. Chapter 784. The citizens of Dressrosa run from the birdcage, which is not cutting the rubble of the town, but rather pushing it towards the centre. Meanwhile, Baby 5 and the Corridor Coliseum fighters notice the shrinking birdcage, and Sai tells the gladiators that are still standing to get the fallen gladiators back on their feet. As Viola, Hack and Usopp climb down from the King's Plateau, Viola notices the epicenter of the birdcage is slowly shifting towards Doflamingo's location, meaning even the King's Plateau, which is at the center of the island, will be torn apart, causing Usopp to get scared and tell them to move quickly. Meanwhile, Kinemon and Kanjuro run after Zoro, asking him where they are headed. Zoro tells them that they are going to stop the birdcage, shocking the two samurai. On the flower field, Cavendish marvels that the dwarves managed to stitch Law's arm back on and hopes that it will heal properly. On the palace roof, Luffy begins activating Gear 4, kicking his sandals off, then covers his left arm in Busushoku Haki and blows into it, inflating the muscles, causing his arm to assume massive proportions. Luffy continues blowing, resulting in his entire torso becoming incredibly large. Gear 4th Bounce Man is finally activated, which causes Luffy to instantly bounce around. This form kind of reminds you of the appearance Luffy took during the Thriller Bark arc, where he absorbed a lot of shadows.
Doflamingo laughs, expressing his disappointment that Gear 4, which he expected to be an ace up Luffy's sleeve, was nothing more than Luffy using his elasticity to bounce around. Luffy replies that during his 2 years training on Ruskaina, this form was necessary to subdue the beast on it into submission. Doflamingo states that he is still confused as Luffy sinks his fists into his body, which astonishes the Shichibukai. Luffy then releases his fist as he strikes Doflamingo, the sheer force which sends Doflamingo flying all the way towards the street of Dressrosa. Doflamingo's hard landing destroys several buildings and causes the fleeing Dressrosa citizens to stare in shock at Doflamingo lying on the ground. Doflamingo slowly manages to get up. Doflamingo is enraged, and this causes the surrounding citizens to flee. Doflamingo then stares up towards the palace and he sees with a shock that Luffy is using his elasticity to fly down towards him. Suddenly, Luffy disappears from sight but quickly reappears behind Doflamingo as he drop kicks the Shichibukai. The citizens stare in shock as Luffy's actions become even more strange when they see Luffy bouncing around the street. Doflamingo flies through several buildings before flying upwards in a rage, trying to understand Luffy's new form. Luffy quickly jumps up and attacks Doflamingo with Gomu Gomu no Culverin Cannon, but Doflamingo manages to evade the strike and flies behind Luffy, attacking him with Athlete. However, the kick does not penetrate Luffy's rubber body, even though it is covered in Buso Shoku Haki. Luffy then repels Doflamingo as he attacks the Shichibukai again. However, this time Luffy redirects its path to follow an invading Doflamingo, succeeding in punching Doflamingo in the face. Chapter 785. The citizens on the streets of Dressrosa are shocked as they see Luffy punch Doflamingo up in the air. As Doflamingo is sent crashing into a building down below, one citizen wonders aloud who Luffy is, but another replies that it doesn't matter and cheers Luffy on. Of course, they can't recognize Luffy in this form. On the flower field, Cavendish reacts in shock to Luffy's transformation, and Law expresses mild shock and relief as Luffy's trump card, but then states that Luffy is overusing his haki. On the roof of the palace, Jesus Burgess surveys Luffy and Doflamingo's fight and wonders whether he should go after them or continue waiting. However, Koala is spying on him from behind a wall and wonders what he is up to. Meanwhile, Viola contacts King Riku while climbing down from the King's Plateau. Riku asks if Luffy's battle against Doflamingo is the only one still going on, which Viola confirms, saying that all the executives have been defeated. At the Smile Factory, Frankie yells to the dwarves to evacuate immediately as the birdcage had reached them. As the dwarves run away, Day and Frankie realize that since the factory is made of sea stone or kairoseki, Doflamingo's devil fruit powers cannot cut through them, and the birdcage is instead pushing the Smile Factory towards them. Suddenly, Frankie sees Zoro, Kinemon and Kanjuro riding on one of Kanjuro's sparrows. Frankie asks Zoro why they are not going towards the centre of the town, but Zoro tells him and the dwarves that they are going to try to stop the birdcage and buy everyone some time. This causes the dwarves to become awestruck, and Frankie ponders Zoro's plan when he suddenly gets an idea. As he lies in the rubble of a building, Doflamingo tries to comprehend Luffy's new form. Luffy then flies towards Doflamingo, intent on ending the battle before Gear 4's time limit ends. Doflamingo asks Luffy how long he will be able to maintain that form as Luffy aims both his fists at the Shichibukai. However, Doflamingo creates two thick waves of string from the ground which block Luffy's attack, shocking the Straw Hat. Doflamingo reveals that there existed another level of Devil Fruit ability known as Awakening. Doflamingo then turns several surrounding buildings into string, telling Luffy that some people's Devil Fruit abilities could awaken in rare circumstances and give them the ability to not only manipulate their body, but the surroundings as well. Luffy is shocked at Doflamingo's new display of power, commenting that it was like Doflamingo was not Paramecia anymore. he showed qualities of a lobia. 20 minutes had passed since the birdcage began shrinking and the citizens continued to run towards the center. During this chaos, King Riku broadcast a message using the Denden Mushi to his citizens, giving them hope and a reason to continue fighting. This gives his people the will to continue to struggle through this dire situation. He also tells the citizens that all the Donquixote pirates have been defeated, save Doflamingo himself, and Luffy was battling him at the present. Back to Luffy, Doflamingo then states that it is time for everyone to fall, and attacks Luffy using several sheets of string. Luffy, knowing that his time in Gear 4 was nearly up, manages to pull in his head and blast through a sheet of string. He then pulls back his arms, hitting Doflamingo with Gomu Gomu no Leo Bazooka. The force of the attack sends Doflamingo flying all the way into the Palace Mountain, and the citizens of Dressrosa cheer at Luffy's attack. So it appears that Luffy has defeated Doflamingo. And that's where this volume ends. So this volume had a lot of action, a lot of development. All the executives, in fact all the Donquixote pirates get defeated. Doflamingo appears defeated at the end of this volume with Luffy using his incredible Gear 4th. So this could be the beginning of the end of the Dressrosa arc. Okay everyone, thanks for watching. Please comment, like and subscribe. Bye.